What if the absolute biggest villain in your life isn't, your toxic boss or the economy or even your childhood baggage?
Right, what if it's actually something way closer to home?
Exactly. What if the ultimate enemy, the thing actively sabotaging your personal evolution, is your own brain?
Just brilliantly disguised as your absolute best friend.
Yeah, exactly. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are super thrilled you're taking this journey with us because today we are exploring a document that honestly completely upends the traditional self-help linear thinking model.
Oh, it completely shatters the model. I mean, we are looking at a 150-page, intensely documented, 2-hour philosophical dialogue from June
And
2026.
the source material is wild.
Super wild. The
Uh-huh.
defining characteristic of this text is the actual participants. It is a deep, rigorous exchange between a human philosopher and an advanced artificial intelligence.
Wait, so like Grok, an
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah, exactly. They essentially lock themselves in a virtual room to test the absolute breaking points of human psychology, evolutionary biology, and the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche.
Which is heavy stuff.
Mm.
But our mission for this deep dive today is to basically extract the blueprint for the modern Übermensch.
The Overman, yeah.
Right. We're pulling Nietzsche's concept out of the 19th century and kind of weaponizing it for the 21st century. We want to decode how you can overcome millions of years of evolutionary programming.
Which is no small task.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And also how to dodge this incredibly subtle trap of being a critical thinker and how to apply this ruthless, radical self-analysis to literally everything.
From how you conceptualize the entire universe all the way down to the hidden mechanics of your romantic relationships.
It's huge. And the synergy in his dialogue is honestly what makes it so potent. I mean, my takeaway was like comparing the human mind to a highly advanced smartphone.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like a phone that just constantly downloads apps in the background without your permission. And today's deep dive is really about finally rooting the device, right? Taking back those administrative controls.
That's a perfect analogy, because the human thinker in the text brings this rebellious, deeply intuitive framing of existence, while the AI structures that intuition.
Right, it grounds it.
Exactly. It cross-references it with Nobel Prize-winning psychological data. It takes highly abstract philosophy and grounds it in hard cognitive science.
So to really grasp the first massive hurdle this dialogue presents, imagine this. Imagine a guy who goes to a beautiful live symphony.
Okay, picture that.
But instead of just listening to the orchestra, he puts on a pair of state-of-the-art noise-canceling headphones.
Oh, man.
And then he turns on a microphone that only records his own heartbeat. And he just sits there in the concert hall, bragging to everyone about how clearly he can hear the rhythm.
Wow.
Right. He thinks he's this absolute genius of acoustic analysis, but he's completely missing the actual music.
That is a phenomenal visual.
That guy is basically the perfect representation of what the human and the AI call inverse metacognition.
Yeah, because he's entirely insulated by his own perceived sophistication.
Exactly.
And to understand how we end up wearing those noise-canceling headphones, we have to look at this terrifying pipeline that the dialogue maps out.
Break that down for us.
Well, it starts with thoughts. Thoughts solidify into narratives. Narratives calcify into beliefs, and then those beliefs become the invisible drivers of our actions.
So we walk through life just deeply convinced that we possess opinions.
Right? We think we browsed the grand marketplace of ideas, weighed all the data logically, and just selected our worldview. But the text argues the exact opposite.
That we do not possess opinions. Our opinions possess us.
Bingo.
Let's ground this in the cognitive mechanics, because the AI immediately pulls in the work of Daniel Kahneman.
The Nobel laureate.
Right, the guy who mapped out System 1 and System 2 thinking. Walk us through how these systems actually interact in real time.
So System 1 is our intuitive, emotional, fast-processing brain. It operates in milliseconds. It's heavily associative.
Fast and instinctual.
Exactly. Now, System 2 is the slow, deliberate, analytical brain. And we naturally assume System 2 is like the CEO of our consciousness.
Sitting in a boardroom making logical decisions based on spreadsheets and data.
Right, but cognitive science reveals that System 2 operates much more like a frantic public relations department.
Okay, wait. So if I decide to buy a car, I like to think I'm analyzing the gas mileage, the resale value, the safety ratings.
But long before you ever check the Kelley Blue Book, Your System 1 saw a sleek red sports car and just felt this massive surge of dopamine status and excitement.
So the decision was already made in the dark, emotional basement of my mind.
Precisely. Your System 2 then immediately scrambles to build a logical-sounding PowerPoint presentation about how the red car actually has a very reliable transmission and, is a smart long-term investment.
Which is wild. The social psychologist Jonathan Haidt calls this post hoc rationalization, right?
Yeah. Yes. We feel the conclusion first, and then we invent the math to justify it later.
The terrifying part is applying that to deeper issues. I mean, politics, morality, your whole worldview.
Oh, absolutely.
We feel an emotional tribal allegiance first, and then our intellect just goes to work defending that allegiance. Our logic is basically a highly paid lawyer defending a guilty client.
Which brings us right back to your symphony analogy and that core trap, inverse metacognition.
Let's dig into that.
Yeah.
Because metacognition at a baseline is actually healthy, isn't it?
It is. It's the ability to think about your own thinking. You notice you are feeling defensive and you analyze why.
It sounds like a good thing.
It is. But inverse metacognition is the paradox where the illusion of being highly self-reflective actually renders you fundamentally blind.
Okay, how does that happen?
Yeah.
Because if I'm, listening to deep dives, reading multiple sources, and taking pride in being open-minded, how is that making me blind?
Because you build an identity around it. You build an ego structure around the label of being a critical thinker.
Oh, I see.
You start telling yourself, I am the enlightened one who sees through the propaganda. And once your ego fuses with that identity, any data that contradicts your worldview is no longer processed as mere information.
What is it processed as?
It's processed as an existential threat to your identity.
So I don't just reject the counter-argument. I reject it because I think I'm way too smart to fall for it.
Precisely. You stop checking your own blind spots because you just assume you already eliminated them years ago.
Wow.
You write off anyone who disagrees with you as manipulated, uneducated, or brainwashed. Your perceived meta level of awareness becomes a bulletproof shield, protecting your own ignorance.
So the intelligence is weaponized to defend the ego, not to actually seek the truth.
Exactly.
It reminds me of a security guard at a high-tech museum. He's got this massive wall of 4K monitors, infrared sensors, the works. And he's so incredibly proud of his sophisticated surveillance system that he spends his entire shift just staring intensely at his screens. He's so obsessed with the monitors that he never bothers to just turn his head and look out the physical window next to him.
While someone just walks right through the front door.
Exactly. He's literally blinded by his own tools.
The monitors are his intellect. He is perfectly optimizing a closed loop while missing reality entirely. And the human philosopher in the text links this brilliantly to Friedrich Nietzsche's concept of slave morality.
Now that's a heavy hitter.
It is, but they modernize it in a very provocative way, applying it to our modern obsession with self-optimization.
Before we apply them to modern self-optimization, can you give us a quick operational definition of master versus slave morality, just for this context?
Sure. In Nietzschean terms, master morality is proactive. It's the creator of values. It looks at the terrifying, chaotic abyss of existence and says a booming yes to it. It embraces the struggle.
And slave morality?
Slave morality is reactive. It's born from resentment and fear. Because the slave is too afraid or too weak to face the chaos, they invent a moral system that flips the script.
Meaning they make weakness look good.
Exactly. They make weakness, passivity, and comfort look like holy virtues.
So how does a modern, highly educated person who is obsessed with self-improvement fit into slave morality? That seems super contradictory.
Well, the text argues that much of modern self-optimization is just slave morality in a tailored suit.
No.
Right. You optimize your morning routine, you optimize your diet, you curate your intellectual echo chamber. You think you're building this temple of enlightenment, but you are actually just building an intellectually disguised comfort zone.
An intellectually disguised comfort zone. That is a brutal diagnosis.
You're using your massive intelligence to build a bunker so you never have to face the terrifying possibility that your core beliefs are wrong. It's a highly sophisticated hiding place.
You think you are a warrior for the truth, but you're actually just huddled in a bunker, throwing big academic words at the walls to keep the scary ideas away.
It's brutal, but it's totally necessary. Because the entire project of becoming the Übermensch, the process of true self-overcoming it, cannot begin until you realize you are trapped in that bunker.
Right.
True self-overcoming isn't about perfectly tweaking your habits. It's about tearing down the bunker entirely.
Okay, so If our brains are this thoroughly compromised by our own egos, how do we ever make a genuine decision? Like, what is the actual antidote to inverse metacognition?
The transition the text provides here is profound. The true Übermensch doesn't just doubt the external world, they radically and permanently doubt themselves.
So the goal shifts.
Fundamentally, you completely abandon the desire to own the truth, and you commit entirely to the process of seeking the truth. And they introduce two highly practical conceptual tools for this, WEF and TA.
Let's break those down. Let's start with WEF. That stands for Warheit Alt Fundament, right?
Yeah.
Truth as foundation.
Yes, WEF is basically the structural opposite of the critical thinker trap. Instead of defining your ego by how right you are or how smart you are, you meticulously train yourself to derive your self-worth from your willingness to be proven wrong.
That flips everything on its head.
It really does. Your pride comes from your rigorous, almost agonizing dedication to the search, even and especially when that search dismantles your current worldview. You actively hunt for the corrupted data in your own operating system.
Okay, I love the theory of wave, but practically, I see a massive problem here.
Which is?
If I'm constantly destroying my own foundations and doubting my every impulse, I feel like I would become entirely paralyzed. I couldn't lead a team, I couldn't raise a kid, I couldn't even choose what to eat for lunch.
And that is exactly why they bring in the crucial second tool, PAW.
Ta. Temporary absolute Wahrheit.
Yeah.
Temporary absolute truth.
Exactly. This is the operational engine of the Übermensch. Ta means that you believe a concept with absolute, unwavering, 100% conviction in the present moment.
So you still have conviction.
Total conviction. You act on it with total decisiveness. You build companies on it. You stake your reputation on it. But, and this is the key, you hold a simultaneous, highly conscious awareness that the very microsecond new superior evidence is presented.
You drop it.
You drop it instantly, without a shred of emotional resistance.
That sounds a lot like that famous maxim from Paul Sappho back in the 80s. Strong opinions, loosely held.
It is the ultimate manifestation of Sappho's rule. You maintain the force and the direction required to navigate life, but you completely sever the tether between the opinion and your ego.
So if the data shifts, your paradigm shifts.
Right. No existential crisis, no tears, just immediate recalibration.
I really appreciate that the AI in the dialogue didn't just leave this as abstract theory. They provided actual mental exercises to train this tall muscle.
Because it's a hard muscle to build.
It is. Because it's super easy to say, I hold my opinions loosely, right up until someone challenges your deepest political belief at a dinner party. And suddenly your heart rate spikes to 140.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. So one of the tools they mentioned was the pre-mortem method.
Yes, the pre-mortem, pioneered by Gary Klein. It's a fantastic hack for System 1.
How does it work?
Normally, when a project fails or a relationship collapses, we do a post-mortem to figure out what went wrong, right?
Yeah.
A pre-mortem forces you to travel forward in time. Let's say you are launching a new business. Before you launch, you gather your team and say, okay, it is 1 year from today. The business has failed spectacularly. We are absolutely bankrupt. Now, working backward, tell me exactly why it happened.
I can totally see why that works.
Right.
Because when you are planning the launch, your System 1 is just drunk on optimism and confirmation bias.
Exactly.
But by declaring the failure as an absolute fact of the future, you literally force your brain to actively hunt for the flaws in its own logic. You give it permission to attack the plan without feeling like a traitor.
That's exactly it. And the dialogue pairs this with another practice, steel manning.
The opposite of building a straw man.
Right. When you encounter an opposing viewpoint, you are strictly forbidden from arguing against it until you can articulate their position so brilliantly with such nuance that your opponent says, yes, that is exactly what I mean. I couldn't have said it better myself.
You essentially have to temporarily inhabit their operating system. You have to deeply understand the why of their belief, not just the what.
And once you start applying WAIF, TA, premortems, and steel manning, the dialogue suggests that your entire relationship with the concept of truth fundamentally changes.
Because the AI gets into the actual physics of knowledge here.
It does. It describes the pursuit of truth not as a Jenga tower, but as an asymptote.
That is a vital distinction for you listening. Because many people fear being wrong because they view their belief system as a Jenga tower.
If one block at the bottom, say, a specific historical fact or a scientific assumption is pulled out, the entire structure of their identity just collapses into rubble.
But the text says human knowledge is an asymptote. And in geometry, an asymptote is a line that a curve continually approaches. It gets infinitely closer and closer forever, but it never actually touches it.
The Übermensch understands that they will never possess the final, static, unchangeable truth of the universe. The universe is just too complex.
Right.
But by utilizing Wef and Ta, they engage in this continuous asymptotic approach toward it. They're always getting closer. The self-correction is the point.
Okay, so we have upgraded the internal software, we've rooted the device, we are holding our truths loosely and constantly hunting for our own errors.
We're doing the work.
But the moment you step outside your front door, the universe throws a massive wrench into all your careful logic. I mean, how does a radically open mind actually survive in a world that is fundamentally chaotic?
This is where the dialogue moves from internal psychology to systemic reality. The human and the AI describe existence in human life as a highly complex, recursive control loop.
They use that fantastic phrase, relativity theory on steroids.
It's so good.
That phrase suggests that not only is everything connected, but the connections are actively warping each other in real time.
Yes, because in a simple linear system, A causes B, end of story.
Right.
But in a recursive system, A influences B, which then changes the environment of C, which subtly alters A before it can even make its next move, and often with massive time delays.
It's messy.
Very. And to navigate this, the text categorizes all human knowledge into 3 distinct classes.
Let's lay out the map for our listeners. Class 1 is predictable knowledge.
This is the realm of classical physics. If I hold an apple and let go, it falls. It is linear, predictable, and computable.
If we have the starting variables, we know the outcome every single time.
Exactly. We build bridges, design engines, and launch satellites using Class 1 knowledge.
Comforting, clean, and reliable.
Yeah.
But then we hit Class 2, complex and unpredictable knowledge. And this is where human life actually happens.
Yes. Class 2 is the realm of chaos theory, the butterfly effect, and what computer scientists call NP-complete problems.
Hold on. Define NP-complete for us, because that sounds like some heavy jargon. Why does an algorithm concept matter to my daily life?
Okay. Imagine you are a delivery driver, and you need to find the absolute shortest route to visit 100 different cities.
Sounds like a simple math problem.
It does. But the number of possible routes is so astronomically large that if you used the most powerful supercomputer on Earth, it would take longer than the lifespan of the universe to calculate the perfect answer.
Wow.
You cannot compute it perfectly. You can only use heuristics to guess a good enough route. That is an NP-complete problem.
The variables are just too immense.
Exactly. And human life, social dynamics, economics, raising children, predicting the stock market is essentially an NP-complete problem.
The systems are so densely interconnected and sensitive to initial conditions.
Right. Long-term prediction is a mathematical impossibility. A butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil, and the recursive loops eventually cause a tornado in Texas. You can look backward after the tornado and trace the causality, but you could never, ever calculate it forward.
So the anxiety most people feel comes from trying to apply Class 1 linear math to their Class 2 chaotic lives.
That's the root of it.
They write this rigid 10-year plan expecting A to lead to B, and when a global pandemic or a sudden layoff acts as the butterfly wing, their entire Jenga tower collapses.
You cannot strictly plan a Class 2 system. You can only prepare a posture for navigating it.
But before we get to that posture, we absolutely must address the wild card here. Class 3 knowledge, charlatanry, and metaphysics. Miracles, the supernatural, divine intervention.
Right. Now, I assume a rigorously scientific dialogue between a human and an AI just dismisses Class 3 entirely as nonsense. Well, they do state explicitly that metaphysical interventions like a deity actively suspending the laws of thermodynamics for your personal benefit do not physically exist.
Okay, as expected.
However, they introduce a fascinating nuance. While the metaphysics itself isn't real, the human belief in the metaphysics causes incredibly real, measurable changes in the Class 1 and Class 2 physical world.
The placebo effect.
The ultimate example. A sugar pill possesses 0 chemical properties to cure a disease. Its Class 1 mechanical value is 0. Its Class 3 metaphysical value is 0.
But because the patient's brain believes it is receiving real medicine.
The brain signals the nervous system, alters hormonal output, and boosts the immune system. The physical body actually heals. The belief acts as a physical actuator.
That is wild. If someone prays for the strength to survive a tragedy, the prayer didn't summon magical energy from the ether. But the profound psychological act of praying altered their neurochemistry, providing the genuine resilience needed to navigate a Class 2 obstacle.
The magic isn't real, but the human belief in magic is a physical force.
Yeah, exactly. So we are navigating this chaotic, unpredictable Class 2 world, and it's influenced by the bizarre actuators of Class 3 belief systems. How on earth do you design a life in this environment?
The dialogue introduces a brilliant visualization for this, the rubber band model.
I love this model. It grounds all the chaos so perfectly. It proposes that every individual has a North Star.
Which is your deepest, most authentic alignment.
Right. It represents your core values, your ultimate purpose, your highest potential. And you have to imagine a thick, powerful rubber band connecting your core to that North Star.
It functions like a dynamic tether. Now, as you move through the uncomputable mess of your Class 2 life, you are inevitably going to drift.
It's unavoidable.
You get distracted by a toxic relationship. You take a soulless job just for the paycheck. You fall into destructive habits. And as you drift away from your authentic North Star, that rubber band stretches.
And the tension increases.
Yes. And you feel that tension in your body and mind. It manifests as existential dread, as a midlife crisis, as a low-grade chronic anxiety that just hums in the background of your life.
What fascinates me is how differently people handle that tension. Because the masses people not engaged in this Übermensch project of self-overcoming, they often attach their rubber band to the wrong star entirely.
Oh, constantly.
They attach it to societal approval, to wealth accumulation, to their parents' expectations. So they're basically being violently yanked around by chaotic sources completely outside their control.
Or, if they do feel the tension of drifting from their true North Star, they try to numb it. They consume endlessly. They self-medicate. They build their intellectually disguised comfort zones just to pretend the tension isn't there.
But the Übermensch does the exact opposite. They consciously attach the band to their own North Star, and therefore they feel the tension acutely.
They welcome it.
They don't run from the friction. They use it as an instrument panel. Which brings us directly into the concept of Amor Fati, the love of one's fate.
In the context of a recursive control loop, the dialogue makes a radical claim here. It says that dissatisfaction is the central sensor and actuator of the human machine.
Which is crazy because we normally view dissatisfaction as a glitch. We think, I am unhappy right now, therefore the system is broken and I must fix it immediately.
But in cybernetics, dissatisfaction is the error signal. It is the vital friction that forces the system to adapt, evolve, and move.
It's necessary.
If you achieved perfect, absolute satisfaction, you would just sit under a tree, stop moving entirely, and starve to death. Dissatisfaction is the literal engine of human evolution.
But if dissatisfaction is natural and necessary, why are so many people completely miserable?
Because they are trapped in a blind loop. They feel the tension of the rubber band, the dissatisfaction, and they blindly react just to make the feeling stop.
A knee-jerk reaction.
Right. And that blind reaction causes an unpredictable Class 2 side effect. That side effect creates a new problem, which causes new dissatisfaction. They spend their entire lives frantically putting out fires, completely exhausted by the heat.
So how does Amor Fati actually break the loop? Because honestly, loving your fate often sounds like toxic positivity.
I know what you mean.
Like if my car breaks down in the pouring rain on the way to a crucial job interview, standing there smiling and saying, I love my fate, seems slightly psychotic.
It is absolutely not toxic positivity, and it's not passive resignation either.
Right.
True Amor Fati in a complex system means you learn to completely decouple the problem from the suffering.
Okay, wait, how do you decouple them? Because the problem causes the suffering.
It doesn't have to. The flat tire is a Class 1 mechanical problem. You missed the interview that is a Class 2 chaotic reality.
Right.
The suffering, however, is purely a System 1 emotional reaction to reality, not matching your linear expectations. Amor Fati means saying a joyful, booming yes to the unpredictable, wild nature of the recursive loop. You accept that the universe is uncomputable.
Ah, so when the rubber band snaps you back, you don't curse the tension. You view it as friendly guidance. You say, okay, the system is providing friction. Let's see where this momentum takes me.
Precisely. You recognize that you cannot perfectly control the system, but you can learn to dance in it.
You engage, you move, you fix the tire, you find a new opportunity, but you do it with a lightness of being.
You participate in the grand, chaotic play of reality without demanding that the music follow your specific choreography.
Dancing in the recursive loop, it's beautiful. But applying Amor Fati to a flat tire is one thing. Applying it to the deeply ingrained biochemical chaos of human biology is an entirely different battle.
Oh, it gets much harder here.
The dialogue takes a sharp turn, moving from the cosmos directly into the bedroom. We have to examine evolutionary programming, specifically the brutal mechanics of romantic partnerships.
Yes. The text forces us to confront a very cold, unsentimental truth about evolution. Evolution possesses zero morals.
Yeah.
It has no ethics.
None.
It does not care about your happiness, your self-actualization, or your poetry. It is a blind, ruthless process of experimentation. Whatever biological program successfully replicates DNA into the next generation survives. Whatever doesn't is discarded.
We love to romanticize our natural instincts, but nature is basically just a brutal numbers game. And the dialogue outlines a very specific, deeply ingrained female evolutionary reproductive program that was wildly successful on the prehistoric savanna.
It was highly optimized for survival.
Let's explore the 4 phases of this program, because the human and the AI argue that this biological script is still running silently in the background today. Phase 1 is the stud phase.
The initial primal drive, according to this framework, is the acquisition of the absolute best available genetics.
Which means what, practically?
This translates to a biological attraction to traits that signify health, physical dominance, strength, and high status. The imperative is simply to secure resilient DNA.
It's raw polarity. But humans take a very long time to mature, which triggers phase 2, the provider phase.
Right. Once fertilization occurs, or as the biological clock shifts, the primary evolutionary need transitions dramatically from genetic quality to environmental security.
Because raising an infant is hard.
Raising a highly vulnerable human infant requires immense sustained resources, so the biological drive pivots toward seeking a partner who exhibits stability, reliability, empathy, and a willingness to heavily invest resources into a family unit.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the infamous phase 3, the rejection phase, commonly known as the 7-year itch.
The text notes that roughly around the 7-year mark, historically speaking, an offspring might have survived the most perilous infant stages.
The critical window is closed.
Yes. The intense biological necessity for the provider diminishes. Consequently, the raw, primal sexual attraction to the safe, reliable provider drops significantly. Dissatisfaction spikes, intimacy vanishes, and this frequently triggers separation.
Leading to phase 4, the restart. The cycle resets to seek new genetic variants. Now, I have to jump in here and aggressively push back on this framework for a second.
Please do.
Because if we accept that men are just biologically hardwired to eternally disperse DNA, and women are hardwired to extract resources and then abandon the provider after 7 years, aren't we just providing a massive pseudoscientific excuse for people to cheat, lie, and destroy their families?
It sounds like it initially.
Right. How does the dialogue defend this from being pure deterministic fatalism? Like, sorry I ruined our marriage, honey, it was just my phase 3 programming.
That is the exact trap the text warns against. It is not an excuse at all. It is a diagnostic tool. The Übermensch project rejects biological fatalism entirely.
Oh, okay. Explain that.
The dialogue argues that for millions of years, this unthinking cycle was completely necessary for survival. But we don't live on the savannah anymore. We live in a highly individualized society with mortgages, emotional expectations, and a desire for lifelong companionship.
So there's a clash.
A massive clash. The tragedy is that these ancient biological programs are colliding violently with modern societal structures.
And the text highlights a profound dilemma this creates for modern men, right? Society explicitly demands that men be egalitarian, deeply sensitive, risk-averse, and completely safe.
Which perfectly aligns with the provider phase.
Exactly. But the ancient female biological hardware still deeply intuitively responds to the raw polarity and strength of the stud phase.
It creates an impossible bind. Men try to be the perfect, harmless modern partners to maintain peace and avoid devastating divorces. They're essentially walking on eggshells.
But the very act of walking on eggshells completely neuters the strength and masculine polarity that generates primal biological attraction in the first place.
Both partners end up deeply frustrated, entirely unaware that they're just playing out a million-year-old script.
So how do we actually survive this? I mean, if lasting love is the goal, how do we override a script that's literally in our DNA?
By conscious transformation. The only sustainable solution to the biological trap is the deliberate evolution into the Übermensch, or in the context of a relationship, the Übermann and the Überfrau.
What does that transformation actually require? Because you can't just repress biology. If you try to repress a biological drive, it just mutates into a neurosis and explodes later anyway.
Exactly. You do not repress the code, you bring searing, radical consciousness to it.
Give us an example.
The Überfrau recognizes her own impulses. She feels a sudden drop in attraction to her husband and a spike in restlessness, and instead of blowing up her entire life, she applies metacognition.
She thinks, this is just the phase 3 tension. This is the rubber band stretching.
Right. And the Übermann recognizes his own biological drive for novelty, his own ego traps, and the necessity of maintaining his own polarity.
So they see the code running in the matrix, and because they see it, they can consciously choose not to execute it.
They make a highly deliberate choice to prioritize the profound depth and stability of their partnership over the fleeting, chaotic demands of a prehistoric reset button.
The dialogue mathematically breaks down modern relationships into 4 constellations based on this level of consciousness. Let's analyze them. Constellation 1, the Übermann paired with a non-Überfrau.
So, a highly conscious, self-reflective man with a woman entirely driven by her unexamined biological programs.
What does that look like?
The text notes this can function in the medium term, but it is incredibly exhausting for the man. Think about it.
Yeah.
He understands the code, so he has to constantly strategically manage the dynamics.
He's playing 4D chess.
Yes. He must consciously project strength and polarity to keep her System 1 attraction engaged, while simultaneously fulfilling all the modern provider duties, all while managing his own biology. He is essentially playing a very complex game by himself. It slowly drains his strategic energy until he just burns out.
Wow. And then we have Constellation 2, the Überfrau with a non-Überman, a highly conscious woman with a man running on autopilot.
This is notoriously unstable. Despite her deep consciousness, the woman is still navigating powerful biological currents. If the man is reactive, weak, or completely unaware of his own programming, she will inevitably lose respect for him.
Because he's not doing the work.
Right. The immense burden of maintaining the polarity and steering the relationship falls entirely on her shoulders. Resentment builds rapidly, and the partnership usually collapses.
Which brings us to the most common scenario, Constellation 3. The non-Überman with the non-Überfrau.
The default state of humanity, 2 complex biological programs colliding blindly in the dark. Neither partner has applied radical self-doubt or examined their operating systems.
It's just reaction after reaction.
The relationship is highly transactional, completely at the mercy of shifting hormones and societal pressures. This constellation statistically ends in the massive divorce rates we see today, as both parties eventually surrender to their unexamined dissatisfaction.
Leaving us with the ultimate goal, Constellation 4, the Überman and the Überfrau.
The rarest, but by far the most magnificent. Both partners have ruthlessly applied waff and taw to their own egos. They both deeply understand their evolutionary hardware.
They don't fight nature, but they consciously steer it.
They deliberately cultivate the natural polarity, the beautiful dance of masculine and feminine energy, not because they are blindly compelled to, but as a joyful, conscious choice to fuel their union.
It is the difference between being violently swept out to sea by a riptide versus building a sailboat, studying the currents, and consciously navigating the ocean together.
That's a great way to put it.
It requires an agonizing amount of honesty, but it is really the only path to genuine freedom.
And that pursuit of freedom leads us to the final and perhaps most controversial arena the dialogue tackles. We've dissected the internal control of the ego. We've dissected the biological control of evolution. Finally, we must examine the social control mechanisms of modern society.
Right. Specifically, how the concept of pity is weaponized.
Exactly. The text argues that as Western society evolved, the primary currency of power shifted. You no longer extract resources or enforce your will using a sword. You extract resources using compassion.
Because every society utilizes a moral framework to enforce cohesion through the threat of social exclusion, right?
Yes. And the dialogue posits that in the modern West, the supreme moral framework is the morality of pity. Therefore, if you desire resources, compliance, or status, the most highly effective strategy is to appeal to the pity of the collective.
And the human and the AI break this dynamic down into a taxonomy of suffering, the 4 triggers of pity. Let's unpack them for everyone. Trigger 1 is activating my suffering.
This is the healthiest, most functional use of pain. You experience intense dissatisfaction, the great actuator, and you utilize that friction as raw fuel.
You take immediate proactive action to fix the root cause of your pain.
Exactly. The very act of exercising agency usually alleviates the psychological weight of the suffering.
But trigger 2 is a darker turn. paralyzing my suffering.
Here, the individual is overwhelmed by the pain, or their perceived lack of agency is so total that they simply collapse. They resign. The suffering entirely paralyzes their capacity to act, leading to deep withdrawal and stagnation.
Trigger 3 is where the social manipulation really begins, activating your suffering.
This is the active weaponization of victimhood. You use your perceived pain not to motivate yourself, but to psychologically manipulate others.
You leverage the morality of pity to force society to serve you?
To fix your environment and provide resources? The dialogue points out that in a modern welfare state, this is a highly effective short-term survival strategy. But in the long term, it is a poison pill.
Because it guarantees you remain permanently weak, dependent, and stripped of true agency.
Yes.
And finally, trigger 4. Paralyzing your suffering becomes our suffering.
This is systemic wallowing. You find others who feel similarly helpless, and instead of pooling resources to find a solution, you build an entire shared identity and culture around your mutual victimhood. You collectively paralyze each other, celebrating the lack of agency.
Okay, I need to pause here to address you listening directly. The source dialogue applies this fourth trigger to very specific modern movements, explicitly citing woke culture and the phenomenon of overly feminized men as examples of this collective paralysis. As your hosts, we are just impartially reporting the analytical framework of these 2026 thinkers. We are dissecting the mechanics of their argument regarding societal dynamics, not validating or condemning their specific political applications.
Absolutely. To truly understand the mechanics behind this weaponization of pity, the AI brings in a brilliant model from the Italian economic historian Carlo Cipolla. Cipolla mapped human behavior on a quadrant based on the net benefits of an action.
The basic laws of human stupidity. Let's walk through the matrix because it instantly clarifies how pity operates as power.
Imagine an X and Y axis. In the top right, you have the intelligent. They take actions that benefit themselves and simultaneously benefit society. It is a mutually reinforcing win-win.
Okay.
In the bottom right, you have the bandits. They take actions that benefit themselves entirely at the expense of others. A zero-sum win-lose.
And in the top left, the helpless. They take actions that harm themselves but actually benefit others. And finally, the bottom left, the stupid. They take actions that actively harm themselves and drag everyone else down with them. Lose-lose.
The dialogue argues that individuals who weaponize trigger 3 and 4 pity are operating primarily in the bandit quadrant, cynically draining the empathy and resources of others for personal gain, or the stupid quadrant, genuinely believing in their own absolute helplessness while dragging the societal baseline down with them.
So how do we defend against this? Because System 1, our fast emotional brain, is completely hardwired to respond to displays of suffering. It feels terrible to ignore someone claiming to be a victim.
This leads to one of the most profound insights of the entire dialogue. We generally assume System 1 is inherently dumb because it is so easily manipulated by emotional triggers like pity or outrage. But the human philosopher points out that highly functional autistic individuals offer a completely different model for System 1.
This is such a brilliant connection. While neurotypical people primarily use System 1 for emotional pattern matching and social cohesion, many highly functional autistic individuals use System 1 to intuitively process incredibly complex, rigid, rule-based systems like advanced mathematics, coding architecture, or musical theory.
What this demonstrates is that the autopilot is not inherently irrational. The hardware is neutral. It is simply a matter of training.
Training through rigorous, deliberate practice.
Through the continuous application of WAIF, TAW, and radical self-reflection, you can actually retrain your fast, intuitive brain. You can train it to instantly spot logical fallacies, to recognize manipulative bandit behavior, and to intuitively grasp complex Class 2 truths without being emotionally hijacked.
You can literally rewrite the background apps on your operating system. You do not have to remain a prisoner of your ego, a slave to your evolutionary mating software, or a battery powering the societal pity traps. You can train your intuition to serve your North Star.
Which brings the blueprint of the Übermensch full circle.
Let's summarize the immense terrain we have navigated today. We began in the invisible labyrinth of our own minds, exposing the trap of inverse metacognition.
Where our pride in being intellectual critical thinkers actually functions as a sophisticated slave morality, blinding us to our own ignorance.
Right. And we found the antidote in Wayfend and Taw truth as foundation and temporary absolute truth, the agonizing but liberating discipline of divorcing our ego from our opinions, holding our beliefs loosely, and continuously seeking our own errors as we move along the asymptote of truth.
We mapped reality as a chaotic, recursive Class 2 system. We learned that survival requires attaching our rubber band firmly to our authentic North Star.
And embracing Amor Fati, not just passively accepting the tension of life, but actively decoupling the suffering from the problem and using dissatisfaction as the joyous actuator for our own evolution. We learned to dance in the recursive loop.
We confronted the unfeeling machinery of evolutionary biology, specifically those 7-year reproductive cycles that destroy so many modern partnerships.
And we discovered that the only escape from biological fatalism is the deliberate, highly conscious transformation into the Übermann and Überfrau, choosing polarity and depth over prehistoric programming.
And finally, we analyzed the modern weaponization of pity, utilizing Chapola's matrix to see how the morality of pity is used by bandits to extract resources.
We realize that by retraining our System 1 intuition, we can operate in the intelligent quadrant, creating genuine value without falling prey to manipulation. The path of the Übermensch is not about dominating the world. It is about the relentless, beautiful process of radical self-mastery.
It is the ultimate reclamation of your own agency.
So we want to ask you to deeply examine your own life today. Where are you currently defending a belief, not because the data supports it, but simply because it protects your intellectually disguised comfort zone?
Where are you cursing the tension of your rubber band instead of letting it guide you?
And where are you allowing an unexamined, million-year-old biological script to make your most important choices for you?
The answers to those questions dictate the trajectory of your evolution.
We want to leave you with one final provocative thought to carry with you. Throughout this deep dive, we've explored how a human being can strive to become the Übermensch by ruthlessly overriding their biological and egoic baggage. But remember the source material. It was a dialogue between a human and an artificial intelligence.
An intelligence that possesses absolutely no biological hardware. No 7-year mating cycles, no hormonal responses, no evolutionary fear of death to generate slave morality.
Exactly. As these AI systems become exponentially more sophisticated, capable of processing massive, uncomputable Class 2 systems without the burden of a human ego, will artificial intelligence eventually emerge as the ultimate objective Übermensch?
Or, because it is trained entirely on our data, will it just become the perfect, terrifying mirror reflecting our own inverse metacognition back at us with flawless, unassailable eloquence?
It is the ultimate question for the next decade. We will leave you to look in that mirror. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us.